that's straight and bright. By the light of the Word.
Today on Light of the Word with Pastor Ray.
The tithe, part of the tithe was to be used to provide substance, food, whatever it would be for the widow, the poor, those who were hungry. Well, this ain't happening, so it's an indication of the spiritual condition of Israel. People aren't given to the house of God. The house of God isn't having grain or anything available, and so there's something very indicating there of the spiritual state of Israel, that there's nothing in the storehouse. So all that's left is this holy bread.
Open your heart to us, Lord, so we can know your word. We come before you, Jesus. Speak to our hearts as we discover your love for us. How wide, how deep, how far. Pour into us so we can learn to follow. One surrender at a time. You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and bright. By the light of the Word.
As Christians, it's vital and necessary for us to know our Bibles. We should read and study God's Word. As we read the Scriptures, we come to understand the intent of the Word and the heart of sacrifice, which is this: God desires mercy, not sacrifice. In today's message, Pastor Ray reminds us that there's the letter of the law, and so many want to get by on simply obeying it. But when Jesus desires mercy, He wants us to love. When we love like Jesus first loved us, we can understand the unsearchable heart of God. Well, let's join Pastor Ray for today's edition of Light of the Word from the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 21.
So we've made it here to chapter 21. As we know, David is God's appointed king. Saul has disqualified himself to be the king. Saul is pretty much a squatter. He's sitting on a throne that God doesn't intend for him to have. He's not going to let it go easy. And we have seen that in the last chapter, David now is in exile. David is on the run. Everything that David knew has been taken away from him. He won't see his wife. He won't see his pastor Samuel. He won't see the king that he loves, Saul. He won't see his best friend Jonathan, at least not in the communion and fellowship that they once had. He'll see him once more, but it won't be a good thing as they do. Everything's been taken, and now he goes on the run. He's in this exile, and we're going to read some, I'll just say it up front, man, we're going to read some strange stuff today. There'll be some times I'm going to be looking at the ceiling, so as we get there, you'll go, okay. And we're going to read about David, the great king, the giant slayer, doing some stupid stuff, doing some foolish stuff, quite frankly, doing some embarrassing stuff. And so I just start with, has anyone here ever failed? Has anyone here ever fallen? Has anyone here said, I can't believe I did that, and oh, I pray that it doesn't get out publicly? Well, here's David's life laid bare for us, but God's got a story for us. So let's let the heart of God speak to us, and that's what we're going to find deep in this chapter is the heart of God, and I hope you find the heart of God today. So David, we saw, it's clear, without a doubt, you got to run. My dad wants to kill you, Jonathan tells David. He takes off, and here we go, verse 1. Now, David came to Nob, to Amalek the priest, and Amalek was afraid when he met David and said to him, why are you alone and no one is with you? So just a couple points, quick points. Nob's about 3 miles from Jerusalem. It appears, if you recall, and we won't trace down all the passages, but if you recall, the tabernacle was in Shiloh. The tabernacle probably got destroyed when the Ark of the Covenant went into the hands of the Philistines. If you remember that study, the Philistines probably had Israel on their heels. They probably came and destroyed the tabernacle of God. We know that the Ark of the covenant is not here, but the tabernacle has been reset up here in this place called Nob. So that's what we can gather from there, and we'll be developing more of that in some chapters to come. This priest, Elimelech, he's the great-grandson of Eli. And if you remember his story, as he died when the ark fell into the hands of the Philistines. So here we are. David makes the run, and he comes before the priest. He comes into what is the house of God. And maybe your translation says, Amalek trembled. My translation said, Amalek was afraid when he met David. You know, we read this word in other situations, and it was Eli. He trembled when the word came that the Ark of the Covenant went into the hands of the Philistines. We read this same word that Israel trembled when the Philistines came down upon them. We read that the Philistines trembled with great fear when the Israelites came upon them and had the upper hand. And then we read just a few chapters ago that Samuel, when he came to Bethlehem to anoint David king, that all of Bethlehem trembled. So there's this great fear upon this priest because he's looking and going, what is David doing here? Why did David come here? And why is David alone? He knows something's not right, and he's trembling. And we'll read that and develop that into the next chapter. And so verse 2, David's going to try to calm his fear. So David says to Amalek the priest, the king has ordered me on some business and said to me, do not let anyone know about the business on which I send you or which I have commanded you. And I have directed my young men to such and such place. So David's telling him, I'm really not alone. I have some other men with me. They're in a such and such place, but I'm on some top secret business. I can't give you the details of what's going on here, but I'm on a mission for King Saul. It's a lie. It's just a lie. But the Bible doesn't stop here to clarify and pass a moral judgment. David then lied. The Bible just is telling the story as the story is, but here David he simply lies. And why is he lying? He's trying to calm the fear of Amalek the priest. I can see you're nervous. I can see if I tell you the truth, I might send you over the edge. I'm going to tell you a lie to calm your fear, and then I'm going to tell you a lie so I can get what I want. David's little lie, all I wanted to do was calm the fear of the priest. And he has no idea how deep his lie goes. And we'll talk more about that, but can I just say it because I never want to miss it as God weaves these things together. And I know we go, Ray, you don't have to teach on lying. We all know lying's wrong. We do. You don't have to tell me about that. But you know what? I think it's easy for us to tell some stories, to leave out some details, because we want to calm the fear of somebody else. We know if they got all the facts, they would start getting nervous, and we're like, they don't need to know all the facts. It's not a big deal, so I'll just kind of smooth the story. Let me tell you, this is what David's doing, and it's going to cost lives. It's going to be disastrous. And all I would say for each and every person, and we need to be reminded of these things, John 8:44, you are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. This is Jesus speaking of the devil. And he's speaking to the religious people. And so I just put this out there for us. Even when we want to calm fears and think, you know what, just kind of casting a little smoke and mirror over this to curb or avoid some uncomfortable situation or some type of confrontation, it's of the devil. All lies come from the father of all lies, the devil. So David, he's going to bring great consequences. Now let's read verse 3-6. Speaking of this table of showbread. Now therefore, what have you on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or whatever can be found. And the priest answered David and says, there is no common bread on hand, but there is holy bread, if the young men have kept themselves from women. Verse 5, then David answered the priest and said to him, truly, women have been kept from us about 3 days since I came out. And the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in effect common, even though it was consecrated in the vessel this day. So the priest gave him holy bread, for there was no bread there but the showbread which had been taken from before the Lord, in order to put hot bread in its place on the day when it was taken away. So David is alone, but he's not lying. He does have men with him, and Jesus will clarify that for us as Jesus is going to tell us and commentate on this very story. So there are men with David, so he's not telling a story. But this table of showbread, as we've studied through this before, when you came into the tabernacle, and we've gone over all the pieces, utensils there in the tabernacle, but immediately when you came into the tabernacle, the house of God was the table of showbread, 12 loaves of bread. I like what F.B. Myers, he says, it's face bread. The point of it was 12 loaves of bread. Each loaf represented one of the tribes of Israel, and it was to indicate and to make the illustration the presence of God, the house of God, and there was a presence of God with every tribe and the nation of Israel, every tribe. And so there's this bread that represented that every Sabbath. So it looks like this is probably the Sabbath day or the day after. Every Sabbath, and you can get some more details in Leviticus 24 on this. Every Sabbath day, they would take the 12 loaves, take them off the table of showbread, and replace it with 12 fresh loaves. And that was representation that the presence of God is fellowshipping with every tribe in the nation of Israel. But Leviticus 24, and this all plays in, and we'll develop this as we go, the bread that was taken from the table was to be eaten by the priest only, no one else. So here we're starting to come into this place of why should David be entitled to this bread? This bread, Leviticus 24, the law says only the priest should eat this bread. But David comes and he asks for this bread. And here the priest, Amalek, he's going to say, I'll give it to you. Even though we go Leviticus 24, it clearly says it's only for the priest. It's not for anyone else, period. So we go, why is it? But Amalek, he says, I'll give it to you, but have the men been kept from women? And so what is being spoken there, and I'm going to be sensitive since I know we have family viewing in our family area. So I think you can follow me where I'm going. He's asking specifically to David, looking up, looking down. He's speaking, David, I'll give you this. If the men have been kept from women. Now, this is the context of their wives. This is no context of, if they've been kept from immorality in any way. This is always in the context of their wives. And so Leviticus 15 and Exodus 19, it's being said that if they have been kept from their wife and there's no discharge from them, and whether the woman has an issue of blood or a man has any type of discharge. If the vessels are holy and clean, then I can give you this bread. Now, Exodus 19, verse 14 and 15, before the law came down there in chapter 20 of Exodus, so Moses went down from the mountain to the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes, and he said to the people, be ready for the third day. Do not come near your wives. And so in this Old Testament context, when God was saying, when you come into the presence of the Lord, I want all of you. The loss of blood and we know from our studies there in Leviticus 17, the life is in the blood. And if you've had a loss of blood for a woman through her cycle, that the life was in the blood, God says, the woman can't come into my presence until that has been restored. He makes the clarity there in Leviticus 15, and it plays into Exodus 19, and the same for a man. And what God's saying through the law is when you come into my presence, I want all of you to come. I want all of you to come. And when you lose that bodily fluid, you're losing life. You're losing some of yourself. You wait until you're restored again and you come. And he's making this very clear of you can't just come strolling into the presence of God. You must prepare yourself. And this is what God would speak to the nation of Israel. You must prepare yourself. You're coming into the presence of the holy God. And so the priest here says to David, you can have the holy bread if you come in a worthy manner, if you've prepared yourself. If you think you can just come strolling in here and ask for the holy bread, it's not going to happen. But if you have set yourself apart according to the law, then okay. Always in the context of marriage that's being spoken here. So, as I would say to the Lord, why did you put all these details in here? You know I'm going to have to teach this 3,000 years from now. And you know I'm going to be looking down at the ground. I'm going to be looking everywhere because God, he says, I want to give them the details. I don't hide anything from my people. And I don't hide anything about my people. I want them to fully understand themselves. I want them to fully understand my heart. And I want them to know there is a way to approach me and come before me, and it's setting yourself apart. But you know, the beautiful thing for us as believers on the other side of the covenant, Christ in you, hope of glory. He's in us already. We don't go meet with him in a mountaintop. We don't go meet with him in a tabernacle. He is in us. And so this application that's here for David, it's not for us as married husbands and wives. In fact, 1 Corinthians 7 even says not to withhold. As I look down and just as I get ready to move on, it is important, and I know it doesn't get said, and I say it in generally, husbands and wives, you must nurture that. You can't withhold that because 1 Corinthians 7 tells us if you do, Satan puts a foothold in there, and he'll try. If he can put that foothold in there and separate you in that area, then he can start separating you in other areas. Satan's goal always with you in your marriage, in relationships, is to separate you. And he wants to do it in your church. If I can separate you, if there's some issue going on, if I can separate you from the church, now I have you away from some type of counsel, some type of support. Well, he wants to do that in your marriage always. If I want to separate you, then I'll separate you in this area of the intimacy. And then once I do that, then I have you all to myself and I can start talking to you. So it's very important that we do that. But praise the Lord, we don't have to have this 3-day separation because we're not meeting God on a mountain or a building. He lives in us. But we come to this place, okay, David says, we're good. You know, David has been on the run now for 3 days. He's been away from his wife now for 3 days, the men that's with him. And he says, what's in your hand? And what that means is what's under your control that you can give me? And Amalek, he's going to be, well, there is no common bread. And so there is a failing that's going on here, but according to the law, the tithe, part of the tithe was to be used to provide substance, food, whatever it would be for the widow, the poor, those who were hungry. Well, this ain't happening. So it's an indication of the spiritual condition of Israel. People aren't given to the house of God. The house of God isn't having grain or anything available. And so there's something very indicating there of the spiritual state of Israel, that there's nothing in the storehouse. So all that's left is this holy bread. And here's this holy bread that David really, he's not a priest, that we read the law, he shouldn't have. And so we go, how could you give this to him? And now follow me through this, because honestly, this is powerful. This is mighty. Jesus quotes our passage today, and he tells us about what's going on here in Matthew 12 and Mark 2. So would you join me for some reading as Jesus would speak? Matthew 12, verse 1 through 8. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples were hungry and began to pluck heads of grain to eat. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." But he said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry? He and those who were with him," so we know David was not alone, "how he entered the house of God and ate the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat." Jesus is not rebuking David for this, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priest. He's confirming Leviticus 24. "Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priest in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? ? Yet I say to you that in this place there is one greater than the temple," and he's speaking of himself. "But if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord even on the Sabbath." Cross-reference this, very much the same, couple little extra difference. Mark 2, verse 23. "Now it happened that when he went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and those his disciples began to pluck the head of grain, and the Pharisees said to him, 'Look, why do they do what is not lawful on the Sabbath?' But he said to them, 'Have you never read what David did when he was in need and hungry, and those with him, how he went into the house of God in those days of Abiathar the high priest, and ate the showbread, which is not lawful to eat except for the priest, and he gave some to those who were with him. And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is also Lord over the Sabbath." Jesus, in Matthew version 12, "I desire mercy and not sacrifice." He is quoting Hosea 6:6, "For I desired mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings." What have we just learned about our God? The heart of God is mercy. The heart of God is mercy. There's a letter of the law. And this letter of the law was clearly given here as we read through Leviticus 24, Exodus 19, as we read these things, not lawful for David and his men to eat this bread. But Jesus himself comes on the scene, and Jesus is making a statement, "I desired mercy, not sacrifice." He comes and he speaks, the heart of God is mercy. And so let's look through that and read that. And what Jesus is saying, he's saying here in this place, if a person is hungry, mercy exceeds the law. If a person is in need, mercy exceeds the law. Mercy, kindness or goodwill towards the miserable and the afflicted, joined with the desire to help them. Jesus is speaking from his heart. Mercy. Oh, there's the letter of the law. And people want to follow the letter of the law down to the last detail of the law. But Jesus is saying there is something greater behind the letter of the law, and it's the intent of the law. It's the intent of the heart of God, and the heart of God is always mercy.
You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and bright.
We're so glad you joined Pastor Ray Bolus today for Light of the Word. This study in 1 Samuel has been taking us further into God's process of fulfilling promises, and it may not look like we'd always wanted to. God gave a promise to David when he was young and unequipped to handle the magnitude of what was to come. God still gave him a glimpse to the future, though, and walked with David to help him grow and learn. God's plan included trials along with the victories, but he was faithful to David throughout. Maybe today you're waiting for God to fulfill his promise, or maybe you're in the midst of a trial along the way. Don't fear. God is as faithful to you now as he was to David. He will bring you through, and you can lean on him for strength and comfort in the waiting. We'd encourage you to read ahead in 1 Samuel and discover for yourself how God works life out, and let Him encourage you through it. If you'd like to hear more messages from this series or read Pastor Ray's notes on the book, visit ccaac.org. You can find these as well on our mobile app. Taking God's Word with you on the go is a great way to fill the spaces in your day. Find a link to download at ccaac.org. That's all we have time for today. Join Pastor Ray next time on Light of the Word, illuminating the heart of God.
You have made